Hello, this is Andy's Golf and Travel Diary, and I am in Tasmania on the North Shore, and I am here with Mr. Barnbougle, Richard Sattler. And Richard, this is an incredible place. Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, absolute pleasure, Andy. It's nice you enjoyed it.
And welcome home. I hear you were in the Far East, but
had a few weeks in China, having a look at the Great Wall and a few spectacular sights around there. Certainly an interesting place.
well, I got to tell you, this is an interesting place. And I played the dunes yesterday, walked 18, and today I walked the 20 here at the Lost Farm. Now, Richard, tell me, why is it called the Lost Farm?
I think it was similar to the dunes. When you're actually grazing cattle, you always named the different paddocks. And the dunes area was always the dunes. The cattle were out on the dunes, and you gather them off the dunes. And the Lost Farm was similar. Because it's the central areas got a sand circumference around it with sand dunes, and the central area was always lost as far as it was hard to find cattle. And if you came in here and found them and they ran the wrong way, they went straight into the dunes and not to be found for another month or two. So it really was following the actual farm names for the paddocks.
Awesome. Well, do you have a couple minutes to answer a few more questions?
Absolutely.
Richard, tell me where you were born and what your early life was like.
I'm a Tasmanian by birth, and that also makes me an Australian, but most people are not sure that it does. And I've always been, I started out, father had a small farm, so I grew up in the industry, and I was a wool classer by trade, classing wool around the shearing sheds around Australia. And then I went in the hospitality industry, so trucking industry before that, so I've had a diversified business life. So really the golf courses are just a combination of the tourism and hospitality business and growing grass.
Now tell me a little bit about the farm your father had.
I didn't know, I bought it. No hereditary stuff here. When my wife and I met, we only had $1,000 between us. We've actually built up from nothing to the operation as it stands now.
And when did you first meet her? At what age?
I think she was 18 and I was 20, I think, 20 or 21. So yeah, we've been married now for 36 years, I think it is. I should remember exactly, but I'll say 36.
And what was your first job after growing up on the farm?
I was a wool classer, which classes and grades the wool in shearing sheds ready to go and be sold to the major markets. So you're actually grading the different styles of wool when the sheep are being shorn.
Now is that located in one area, or are you traveling around Tasmania?
Travel around all over Australia where the sheep are shorn is where you work. So you're often only in the same place for 3 weeks at a time.
But what was the idea, or how did the idea come to you to diversify it into tourism?
I think it's very hard to generate a big capital base straight out of farming. It's usually something that's inherited and there's big capital available to the family, so I didn't have any capital, so I was starting with nothing. So I went into the trucking game first and then the hospitality game to build a capital base so that I could buy a decent rural holding.
Tell me about the time you had the golf club in your hand for the first time.
Well, it's an awesome bit of material and it was very hard to hit that very small ball very far. I went into shock straight away and thought I'll never be able to do this. And I was thinking of the ripe old age of about 52 when I started.
52?
Yep. And I still played very poorly, so I haven't learned much.
When did the idea of Barnbougle come to you as a golf resort?
When I originally bought the property, which is 13,000 acres and got 8 kilometres of beachfront, it was always looking for an opportunity, and golf was certainly one of them. And then the economic times were tight at the time, and then back in about 2000, young bloke come and wanted to lease some ground with the idea of a golf course, and I found that he had no money and no expertise, and by then I'd met Mike Kaiser from Chicago, who was a very successful developer at Bandon and other places, and Tom Doak, the architect, and the two of those convinced me to go ahead with it.
How did you meet Mike Kaiser?
Mike Kaiser loves touring the world and having a look at great golf sites, and he'd heard via Tom Doak, who heard it via Mike Clayton, that the land was good. So just a combination of circumstances had him down on site. Tom said that one of his associates to have a look, and then came down himself, and they said, look, unless you do it yourself and do it on the Band and Dunes model, it will probably never happen. So I sort of followed Mike Kaiser's model right through until we still do today, and set up a great family friendship in the process.
Driving in the Lost Farm, you see that huge sand dune out towards the right. This is all natural sand dunes. It's your own little sandbox out here on Tasmania. You hear about the sandbelt courses in Melbourne.
Yeah. Well, the sandbelt courses in Melbourne are probably 300 or 400-year-old sand. A lot of the sand's fresh. When we're doing the dunes 18th hole, the sand was still blowing in off the beach as we tried to stabilise it. The windstorm, when we were halfway through, put about 6 inches of sand over our grass surface. So it is very new sand.
Tell me about your 4 children. They're all involved in the business.
Yeah, and amazingly, they all know more than me already. Also, they tell me that eldest Elizabeth does marketing and she's got her own business in Melbourne. And Penny, who you've met here, and she's general manager and sort of the highest ranked family member in the organisation. And son Stephen's taking over the farming operation, and Olivia's now back and doing accounting and running the day spa at present as well.
Tell me about the farming operation. You make it sound like it's a small little family farm.
Yeah, it's just a little farm. I call it a hobby farm. We run about 5,500 cattle and grow nearly 6,000 tonnes of potatoes a year. So yeah, it's basically only a hobby farm. It takes a bit of time. Just
got a few steer out there, right?
Yeah, just a few steaks running around on the foot.
What's out in the future for Barnbougle?
I don't know. We tend to just reinvest when the opportunity's there, and we're at present we're looking at a 3rd course, and we'll probably make that decision over the next 12 months whether we go ahead with one option is to move inland and get a little bit more sheltered, because we're certainly prone to the traditional winds, and they're the winds that form the sand dunes. So we've certainly got a nice patch of ground very similar to the Melbourne sandbelt that we're looking at present. So I think the next 12 or 18 months we'll make a decision whether we go for a 3rd.
Well, Richard, all the golfers out there, they already know it already. This is a must-play, must-see, must-experience sort of golfing once in your life. Thank you so much for having me here and being part of Andy's Golf and Travel Diary and being part of my golf journey to Australia. Tasmania is an island state in a country that's a continent of all of its own, and just a remarkable experience. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here with you today.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. It's great to have you here.